Look guys, I know I'm 4 years late into the conversation, though then again 4 years ago I didn't have a reviewing channel and the ability to elaborate myself in a critical manner, so screw it. Everyone likes to shit on Electro from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, saying that he was an underdeveloped character with confusing motivations, but I would argue otherwise. It's time for me to present my case for why Electro is not as bad as everyone thinks he is. Let me start off by explaining how exactly he first started liking Spider-Man, which was in the very beginning of the movie. Before Max Dillon met Spider-Man, he didn't show any signs of ever liking Spider-Man or anyone for that matter. He just came across as a loser nobody until Spider-Man saved him and told Max when he had self-doubt that he's not a nobody and someday he will be reliable to someone, even Spidey himself. And that was the first time someone gave meaning to his life, which led Max to grow a passion for Spidey, including defending him against criticism. Now, this is only the first layer of his developed character. Let's get down to the second layer, his sanity. Max is not normal. In fact, there were hints early on that he was not socially and mentally well adjusted. He has no friends, which is why he mostly talks to himself and doesn't have anyone to celebrate his birthday with. And this anti-socialism could have led him to be vulnerable to attention, which is why the first person to ever acknowledge him in his life, based on what was presented in the movie, ended up being an idol to him, to the point where he decorates his entire apartment with Spidey junk and has an internal mental breakdown when one of his co-workers took Spidey's name in vain, which for him it's basically disrespecting his godly friend. And now let's get down to the moment where everyone thinks his character had a nonsensical change of motivation, but I honestly don't think it was the case. Max turned into this electric monster, unplanned and out of nowhere. His entire life just had a drastic turn and he's all confused and unsettled on where to go from there on. Then his hero Spider-Man, the only person who sees Max Dillon as not a nobody, arrives, and the first interaction he had with him was total confusion on Spidey's side. Not only did he not recognize him initially, but even after Spidey recalls having an encounter with him, he couldn't remember his name. Now, this wasn't necessarily what made him snap, but you can argue that it was an initial trigger point that made Max saltier on Spidey's alliance with him, and then the moment arrives when one of the cops shoots him, even though Max told Spidey not to send any of the cops to shoot him. After that happened, everyone started cheering on Spider-Man's heroism, and all of the giant screens had their focus on Spider-Man. Now, earlier in this scene, the screens were initially centered on Max for a while. He was the spotlight, and now the spotlight changed to Spider-Man. Remember, Electro is someone who craves attention, and even if he's likely wasn't consciously satisfied with him initially being the center of attention, having that attention taken away by Spidey in a scenario where he could interpret as Spidey betraying him would probably tick him off. And some might argue that if he had just been a little bit more rational, then he wouldn't have to resort to needless anger and grudge against Spidey. But again guys, let's remember, Max is not a sane person as hinted in previous scenes, and he was dealing with confusion after he was mutated. The only beacon of light he had was his idol, who ended up testing his trust and being a pain to him in ways that are close to his most vulnerable points. All of this in his most confused state. And what happens when your most unhealthily beloved one breaks your heart? You resent him and hate him with a burning passion. And since he has nothing to lose because he's a nobody with no friends, he's very much willing to abandon any morals he might have. And what's the most powerful position you can reach that'll attract everyone's attention? The position of a god, which he saw a potential for given his powerful abilities. And taking into account how he was powerless throughout his entire life while also being treated like shit, maybe this scene makes a little bit more sense.
Kill the light. Everyone in the city is gonna know how it feels to live in my world. A world without power. A world without mercy. A world without Spider-Man. And everyone will be able to see me for who I truly am.
Now, I don't want to give Max too much credit. I would have appreciated if I knew more about his childhood and his relationship with his family, which would certainly help offer some context to the type of person he is now. But I really thought it was important to highlight the few moments where I actually think the movie tried to offer some explanation for his actions and not just brush off this character as an inconsistent villain with no fleshed out motivations. Anyway, this isn't the last video related to Marvel that I'm releasing. There's another one coming up, and no, it's not a review of Infinity War. You'll see it when I upload it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Bye for now.